Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever seen any sort of chess content here on YouTube, you've probably watched Magnus Carlsen play against other chess grandmasters. That's because when you reach a certain level of any sort of sport or game, you never go back down to play against the mortals. That might just negatively affect your play. But in 2017, something very interesting happened, and an amateur sat down to challenge Magnus Carlsen. And that person is named Max Deutsch. He is responsible for a blog known as Month to Master, where he takes 30 days to develop a skill, and then ultimately complete some sort of final challenge. That might mean playing a piano and making a freestyle rap, it might mean solving a Rubik's Cube or a crossword puzzle like an expert, but in this case, his final task was playing a game and trying to defeat the best chess player in the world. In this video, I'm going to take you through how that challenge developed, what the strategy was of Max Deutsch to defeat Magnus, and we're gonna take snippets of the original published video on the Wall Street Journal, which has about 10 million views. Wall Street Journal, please don't copyright strike my video. And just a quick note before we jump into whether or not Max can actually defeat Magnus Carlsen, please, whatever your opinion might be of this challenge, do not get hateful. I was reading comments on the original video and Max's personal blog. I mean, people are just so mean. Even if you think that this is an insurmountable task, please be nice. All right, let's go.
All right, so who am I? I'm Max Deutsch. I'm 24 years old. I live in San Francisco, and I would consider myself an extreme learner. The final challenge is to defeat world champion Magnus Carlsen at a game of chess.
Well, Max, it's a pleasure to meet you. From myself and my community here on YouTube, we'd like to say hello. Now, please tell us, what is going to be the strategy to get good enough at chess in 30 days to not just beat, let's say put up a fight against Magnus Carlsen?
And I very quickly realized that I just couldn't climb that chess skill ladder fast enough in a month. And so if I wasn't going to learn chess like a human, the other option I had was to learn chess like a computer. The idea is that could I build an algorithm in my computer that looks at any given chess position, and without having to go any further, any deeper, could say whether that's a favorable position or not.
So at this point in the video, there's like a little slide that says Max constructed an algorithm using data from thousands of documented chess matches. I'm literally reading it off my second monitor. And this is the only thing about this entire video that personally I felt mildly offended by. Because you don't need to really build an algorithm. I mean, you can just spend 30 days like looking up some openings and then doing some tactics. I feel like they kind of tried to reinvent the wheel here for the average viewer, but to be honest, it probably worked because the video's got like 10 million views almost. So it kind of makes Max sound like an absolute genius. I mean, I'm not doubting that the guy is extremely smart and he's probably a successful businessman, but what the hell are we doing here? Why are we reinventing the wheel? Now, at this point in the video, something absolutely wild happens. Basically, the premise of the video admits that Max's algorithm, whatever that means, is not ready.
One thing that I did not anticipate was how long it would take my computer to come up with this algorithm. And so as we're speaking right now, my computer is still chugging away.
This is the one part in the video that I completely don't understand. So were they trying to make his instincts just seem like really good? Were they trying to say that he like came into a test like at school without studying but got 100? Like I don't, what were they trying to build drama? There's even a small clip of him like sitting on the floor solving a Rubik's Cube while waiting for Magnus to arrive. It's kind of ridiculous. But after this, we're gonna take a look at the game.
So right now, as I'm sitting here, I have nothing memorized. I think the game starts in the next 3 hours, so cutting it really close.
And before we get into the match itself, Magnus, I would just like to openly ask you, why did you agree to this challenge?
I have agreed to this challenge because I'm genuinely curious to what he's able to do in a month.
So what I'm hearing is you got paid a lot. All right, fantastic. That's very understandable. Let's keep it rolling. Let's take a look at this massive battle between champions. Max Deutsch begins the game with pawn to e4, best by test set by Bobby Fischer, one of the greatest players of all time, and Max Deutsch not far behind as one of the greatest chess players of all time. Magnus comes back with e5. He played this in the World Championship match, and to be honest, I believe that to this day, this is the game that inspired him to play e4, e5 in his World Championship campaign against Jan Nepomniachtchi. So we have a Rilopez, the opening that Jan sampled against Max. And here we don't have a Berlin, and we don't have a Morphy's defense with a6. Magnus plays the cozy defense, the Cozio with knight e7. Breaking some of the principles, right? You're not putting the knight into the middle of the board, but the whole point is that you're not ever in any danger of having your structure compromised. The knight would come out here, and now black would comfortably have the two bishops and would be just well on his way to developing normally. The problem with the Cozio is that if white plays aggressively with moves like d4, c3, actually sometimes even in that order, like white can gambit, not in this particular case, but for example, c3 and d4, like just very, very aggressively playing against the center, because black is a little bit tangled, right? But if you just play natural moves like castles by Max, not a bad move at all, and black plays g6, you know, now moves like c3 and d4 must be played. Like if white stalls a little bit longer and doesn't play immediately in the center, black is just going to develop the bishop on g7, castle, and play either d6 or even d5, because this sort of obscure knight placement does support a center advance with the move d5. So Max, to his credit, actually plays the best move. Like according to mainline theory, this is all the main stuff. We have pawn takes on d4. And now white can play this gambit line with c3 and go for a position like this. Bishop g7, get very aggressive, knight d5, bishop g5, etc. But Max just casually recaptures back. Notice here that Magnus keeps the tension. He doesn't just take, because if he takes, he's actually just losing. Not the rook. The rook has to move, but now that black has lost the right to castle, black is never going to get the king to safety. White very quickly just gets an overwhelming lead in development and pushes forward all the pieces, connects the rooks, and dominates. That is not what happens. Instead, Magnus plays bishop g7, attacking the knight in the center. Max Deutsch, despite not having the help of his algorithm, plays bishop to e3, defending everything in the center. Very decent move. Castles and knight c3. This is actually the mainline thread, I believe. I believe they followed the mainline position up until this moment. Here, the best move for black is to take the full center with d5. I've just mentioned this, but Magnus plays d6. Not the most popular move in the position, and it's also not the best move. Just so you know, it's not the best move. But when you're playing a lower-rated player and you don't know what their skill is, sometimes you just want to be solid. You want to see that moment in the game when they're gonna begin imploding, right? And here, white should continue with simple moves like queen d2, because now you're going to bring your rooks to the middle of the board, or you are going to set up a battery to go get rid of that dark squared bishop by the opponent's king to potentially create an attack later in the game. There's also another move here, which is f4. f4 is a tough move to play. The point of f4 is, honestly, you're just taking some space, and you might rook lift, so you might, you know, transfer your pieces over here with your rook and your queen to create some attack, or like, I'm just going to make a random move, f5, honestly. There's going to be moments where this pawn, supported by the other center pawn, the knight and the rook, will just march forward, and this is creating a same-side attack on your opponent. Sometimes possible when the f-pawn is mobile. But here, Max Deutsch plays knight d5. Knight d5, not a bad move. I mean, it's an inaccuracy in the sense that white has better moves, but it's not a blunder. But it does allow Magnus to kind of very quickly kill the tension. And what he does is he takes, and to the untrained eye, this just looks completely fine. But the problem is that now that you've made it symmetrical, so you have A through D, and you have A through D, Magnus will go into the middle of the board, and now this bishop is sort of awkwardly standing there, right? So even though the amateur completed the development and got the knights and the bishops out and castled the king, so the amateur played 10 good moves. Like, good moves. Magnus is in trouble, and if you have any chess experience, these are normal-looking moves, but now is where the rubber meets the road. Now you're going to be able to see whether or not white really is an amateur who just kind of memorized certain moves prior to the game, or actually has a promising career in chess. Rook e1. Rook e1 is, again, one of these moves that you sort of play offhand without actually thinking about the true essence of the position. This move does nothing. A better move would have been to anticipate the incoming knight to g4, because good players need to understand like what trades in the position want to happen. So actually moving this bishop out of nothingness back here to cover the knight coming to g4 actually is a very good idea. And then again, building up this battery, maybe taking some space on the queen side with a move c4, at some point connecting the rooks, maybe trying to kick this knight out of the center. But rook e1 allows knight to g4, and now that bishop is going to be taken. So we have queen f3. Queen f3, again, not a terrible move visually, but unfortunately allows a very forcing move by black. Queen to h4. So now you give black two moves. He's moved his knight out of the middle, and he's threatening some nasty things over here. But besides the very obvious threat of queen takes h2, which can be parried with a simple pawn push, he's also threatening to transform the position in an advantageous way, right? So his queen, knight, and bishop are all working together in a way that's only going to be seen when the position begins opening up. Knight takes e3. Notice that Magnus could have played knight takes e3 a move ago. He could have played knight e3, but there would have been no threat on this pawn if he played queen h4. So what he does is he plays queen h4 first, threatening this, and when this moves, now all these pieces kind of team up. And if you see the queen and the bishop both hitting the knight, you know that you have to take back on e3 with the pawn, because that is what you have to defend. But with your queen around, you're like, I'm gonna go here, and now it takes 14 moves for the first mistake to occur, but it's a pretty big one, and Magnus Carlsen is officially up a knight and winning the game. Now, let's see how he converts this advantage. We have queen d2 defending this pawn, but Magnus does win an extra pawn for his troubles. I mean, that's just a free pawn. There's no need to not take it. Go ahead and take it. The rook is gonna move, and Magnus comes back a little bit more actively. He also could return all the way home, but he realizes that here he's very strong and maybe in the future can create some attack. Very difficult to do something with white here, especially because you're playing Magnus. I would play rook b4, which is actually exactly what Max does. So nice coordination here, good board vision. Actually, honestly, pretty decent board vision here. And now the queen has to come back. But the problem is that Magnus probably anticipated this, and with three pieces all on the same diagonal, that bishop is headed straight down to c3. So Max has to see it. He does not. He does retreat his bishop back from no man's land, but now he's going to get absolutely butchered. That dark squared bishop is the MVP. Queen f4 is a decent attempt, but the problem is that after Magnus simplifies, he just goes here. Had he taken the rook first, like this, he would have lost his queen. Admittedly, he would have gotten two rooks for it and would have still been winning. But there's no need to lose your queen, although it would have made for good content. And now, the rest of the game is relatively straightforward. By the way, notice how Magnus has done all his damage without moving two rooks and a bishop. Like, he hasn't touched those pieces. He castled, but he hasn't touched those pieces. So, even a good player will maximize with what they have. Now he begins the process of bringing the pieces. You see, he brings the rook to the open file. The bishop now kind of harasses the pieces. c5 here. Rook e4, so a big moment in the game. Does Max Deutsch know about the en passant rule? Does he know about dc6 en passant? I don't know. I don't know. He is a self-proclaimed 1100, but I don't know. He trades rooks in a losing position, which is not the worst thing in the world, but Magnus now begins the cleanup process. f5, look at that move, a pawn fork. Magnus even throws in, this is just for good measure. He could have played pawn f5, king f5, but he doesn't want that. Instead, he deflects the king backwards. And Magnus wins this game by bringing the other rook to the party, infiltrating, coordinating here with the bishops. And when the king is stuck on the back rank, there are many ways to win, one of which is promoting a queen, but Magnus doesn't do that. He swarms the king with the bishops, covering all escape routes, and delivers the final blow with rook to a1, checkmate. Okay, so now that the game is over, let's take a look at potentially the post-mortem of the entire thing.
The first 5 moves.
Yeah. No, I mean the first 10 moves were very good.
Keeping him a little bit nervous for at least 8 moves was a minor victory. And then after move 12, my pieces were just dancing around.
Okay, so right there, they just said a bunch of random moves. They said 5, 10, 8, and 12. So what the hell was even the turning point of the game? Oh my goodness. At some point, Magnus is showing him something on the board. This very next moment is probably my favorite of the entire video because of just how little sense it makes.
You were very serious. I moved my knight here and you twitched a little bit, like you realized that it was gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Magnus twitched a little bit because he realized it was gonna be okay. For whom? Why would he twitch if it was gonna be okay? I mean, normally he would twitch if it was a bad move. I don't understand anything. Anyway, folks, my final thoughts on this project were obviously I'm just trying to have a laugh at the expense of Mr. Max Deutsch. I'm not trying to hate or pile on the guy or anything. To be honest, it kind of takes a lot to put yourself out there in a situation like this. And sometimes when you go into a world like chess that you don't know a whole lot about, you kind of run the risk of making a bit of a fool out of yourself. And as much as chess has historically had a bit of a gatekeepy, elitist, intelligence vibe to it from the community, yeah, this kind of like crossed the boundary to the other side, like where you just say that you could do something so incredible in 30 days, and then you also stuff it full of this algorithm nonsense, and then, yeah, even a normal chess beginner can just be like, yo, this dude's got no clue what he's talking about. On the flip side, I do admire Max for the stuff that he does. I would love it if I was not as lazy as I am and I could learn a skill every 30 days, but I can't. So I take my hat off to him. This whole thing was honestly kind of interesting. I think there were a lot of winners, even on the publicity stunt side of things. And honestly, I feel like we should look at the positive. We all get to make content out of this and live happily ever after. That's all I have for you for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Peace out. Get out of here.